I don't think enough people have asked this question, but when exactly is Carter Starocci supposed to return to the Penn State lineup after this leg injury?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Carter Starocci battled through a leg injury, secured that fourth title, but now comes into question his recovery, his timeline for this upcoming season. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Jeff Byers, the voice of Penn State wrestling, is back on the show. He's also the morning show host over on Fox Sports 98.7 FM in State College. So if you like local sports, tune that dial to 98.7 FM, or you can stream it at 987thefox.com if you are out of the area. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, folks, let us know down in the comments section. Be a part of the discussion when you think Carter Starocci will return from this leg injury. Jeff, I don't think this is talked about enough here, as we're going to talk about his timeline, where he fits best into the lineup with this recovery timeline, and then other things regarding Tyler Kasak, 157 pounds, and Penn State wrestling knows its first opponent in the regular season. But Carter Starocci just overcame a serious leg injury, wrestled through it at the NCAA championships, then went to the Olympic trials. But Jeff, just what we know logically from these kinds of injuries and Carter just alluding to the severity of it, we know that he is slightly superhuman here and can defy the odds, but I'm not anticipating him back until at the very minimum 2025. That's the very earliest.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the case, Zach. I think the injury he had was more that he needs rest, which is not an easy thing to convince Carter Starocci. He needs to just kind of stay off it a while. But I'll be a little surprised if he's not ready to go at the start of the season. You never know. I obviously there can be setbacks, and again, he is a guy that is so active and likes to test the limits on things. But I think he's also smart enough at this stage of his career to understand what's best for his long-term well-being and to give him the best chance to compete. So I don't know with any certainty, but my expectation would be that he'd be available at the start of the season. Now, whether or not Penn State wants to play it close to the vest and, give some other guys an opportunity, it has changed quite a bit here, Zach, with that rule that allows kids to compete up to 5 dates and retain that redshirt status. And so with the folks that Penn State has in the program now, you could easily go a couple of months, give some other guys an opportunity to show their wares, still keep their red shirt, and bring Carter in. But my understanding and to my knowledge, I think Carter physically should be ready to go here at the outset of the collegiate season.
And like I said, we know one of the regular season bouts that Penn State is going to have. And Carter doesn't have to wrestle, like you said, and they're going to selectively have him for different types of matches. So those out of conference matches, don't anticipate that Carter's going to wrestle against, again, hypothetically, where he sustained the injury, the types like Edinburgh. Carter's not going to wrestle in those anymore. You're definitely going to see him for the likes of Iowa, Ohio State. Again, just logically, from what I understand, based on injuries like this, it takes time to recover, but Carter is, again, defying those odds, which is why I prefaced it. So I think that's very good news for Penn State, but also the fact that Penn State has a lot of options that Zach Ryder, Connor Mirasula, right? It's not just about one weight class, and it kind of ties into the next part of this. So at the end of the day, Jeff, 174 has always been his weight. Now 184 is a possibility. Still 197. He's talked about that in interviews with Flow Wrestling. But Flow Wrestling's also brought up something that we've talked about on this show, is that 184 is where Starocci could ultimately fit best in the lineup. I think at the end of the day, that's where he fits best. But Penn State has so much flexibility that he could wrestle at 184, 197, and you really don't miss a beat with your options in Josh Barr, Connor Mirasula, Lucas Cochran, right? Penn State just has so many different ways that they could build this lineup.
They do, and I think it's one of the fascinating things to watch here really over the next several years, Zach, including in the upcoming season. But you have a lot of guys who come in with tremendous credentials, have proven themselves at every level that they've competed at to this point. And you only have 10 starting spots here on a collegiate wrestling team. And so I think one way or another, there are going to be some spectacular wrestle-offs in that room in the upcoming season. And how it shakes out, I don't know. And I think there's still some uncertainty as to where a few of these guys are going to land, including Carter Starocci, in terms of what weight class they will compete at. I think there's probably been a lot of conversations among the teammates about, hey, where are you going? What do you think you're doing? Type of stuff. And listen, I think that the interesting thing, Zach, is I think this team has a bunch of guys that want to compete now. They want to be part of what they see, rightfully so, as one of the great runs here that I think Penn State is set up for to have in the history of college wrestling, and they want to be part of it. And that's obviously a great thing. And again, it is a problem that every college coach would kill to have, but it is still a problem. Again, you have 10 starting spots. Now, Penn State has some flexibility here with the redshirt possibilities, and so certainly that can come into play, and I suspect there will be some interesting conversations between coaches and some of these wrestlers as we get near the season about, hey, let's talk about what maybe is in your best interest as well as the programs. And, you know, some decisions will be made one way or another. At some point, though, you are going to have some guys who don't have redshirt options, and they're going to have to meet one way or another somewhere in the lineup, other elite talent. And again, somebody's going to beat somebody, and then it'll be interesting to see, does the person that doesn't emerge as the starter in that given season go elsewhere, or do they try to figure out where they can best fit in the upcoming season? Again, to me, it feels almost inevitable that Penn State will lose some of these guys at some point, just because, again, these are guys that clearly project as four-year starters, four-time All-Americans, and it's hard to imagine a bunch of those guys, 4 or 5, say, nope, I'm willing to just sit on the bench and wait my turn and see if it works out for me somewhere down the road. But again, we'll see how it all plays out. I do think there are a ton of unanswered questions right now about how this is actually going to play out in the upcoming season.
And one of those biggest question marks sits at the 157-pound spot. Levi Haines, the rumor of Tyler Kasak, maybe even Mitchell Messenbrink. We're going to discuss that on the other side of this break. And today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not necessarily have the time to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, quicker, and more intuitive. And that's also why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Be one of them. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Tyler Kasak ends up not wrestling at the U20 World Team Trials, and Joe Smeltzer and I from Nittany Sports Now talked about it on a recent podcast that this has bigger implications, literally and figuratively, of Tyler Kasak, who was supposed to be that wrestler in waiting at 141 pounds behind Bo Bartlett. But then, Jeff, you and I have discussed this, that Tyler Kasak has the build that would allow him to move to 149, maybe even 157. And here we are sooner rather than later. Kasak could just, it creates what we've always, just every spot in the Penn State lineup, there seems to be a log jam. Other than heavyweight with Greg Kirkfleet returning, there is an if or this person or that person could wrestle at any given spot. Aside from, again, I should throw Bo Bartlett in there as well. But you could debate every other starting spot in the lineup. And 157 just gets a little more murkier because Tyler Kasak could wrestle there. What about Levi Haines? He has the build where he could go up to 165. What about flipping weights to Mitchell Messenbrink? That's why he's in this conversation as well. Your thoughts on the idea that Tyler Kasak is ready to go and compete at 157?
Yeah, I think that probably is the case. Again, Tyler is just a very solidly built kid, and I think is growing and will likely continue to grow. So I think Tyler probably is. I would project him at 157 for the upcoming season. Now that doesn't mean that, and this is another component that I think is going to be fascinating to see in the upcoming season is where do these guys compete and where do they certify? Because there are some weights where Penn State feels really good about its starter and pretty good about the backup. But do you have some situations where, hey, in case we have somebody that gets injured partway through the season, let's get you certified. Are you willing to certify at this weight and maybe, at least to start the season, try to compete at a higher weight? I think at least at a couple of spots, that's certainly a possibility. Again, to me, there's a few guys that on paper, it would make sense. Hey, you have the redshirt opportunity. Let's take advantage of it. But I just don't think that's the mindset of many, and I'm not sure of any of the current elite guys on the roster. I think, again, all of these guys are just chomping at the bit to have the opportunity to get out there and compete in the upcoming season and for every year going forward that they're eligible. But again, I do think there is some flexibility there, and maybe through the wrestle-off process or just kind of seeing how the bodies are adjusting, some decisions are made and conversations with the kids and the coaches. Hey, you know what? Maybe let's go ahead and take a red shirt since we have that opportunity and really dial in on being, a true whatever the weight class may be in the upcoming season, so that we're not just trying to, finish up a transition and maybe rush that when there's not a need to. But again, it's going to be fascinating to see how a lot of these situations play out in the upcoming year.
I don't even think the most interesting part of this conversation is Tyler Kasak's jump from 141 to 157. It's the fact what is there, and what has been there is an NCAA runner-up as a true freshman, an NCAA champion as a true sophomore, and that is Levi Haines. That is his weight class. It's been his weight class, but Jeff, again, it goes back to the people that have been everydayers and know these conversations. But again, I have to preface in case you are a new listener, a new viewer, and thank you for being here. But Levi Haines, this is kind of the same thing. His build allows him to move to 165, but Mitchell Messenbrink's there. And then we talked about the potential of, okay, Messenbrink flips to 157. Levi Haines takes over 165. But that's not easy to do now, and it becomes a lot more difficult when now Tyler Kasak's in the equation. So, Jeff, what are your thoughts as the voice of Penn State wrestling on the idea that Levi Haines doesn't have a spot now at 157, 165 because of Mitchell Messenbrink, and therefore now 174 actually starts to logically make some sense here, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's going to be one of the many stories that I think are going to be worth following here, but I do think Levi's build would allow him to make that jump to 174. And I think Levi would just soon do that now. Again, I don't think any of these guys are looking to redshirt. I don't have any inside information, and I want to make that clear. But to me, just looking at the situation, I think a red shirt for Levi in the upcoming year would make a lot of sense, especially if the decision is, hey, I want to go up to 174. Now, Levi is a talented enough kid that I'm not saying he couldn't go out and win a national title at 174 if that's what he's set his mind on, because he definitely has that type of talent and he has that type of commitment. And, we've seen Penn State kids over the years, Zach, make decisions. It's not a point of emphasis with the coaches in terms of, hey, we need you at this weight or we need you to get down. It's the kids looking at it and, okay, this is what's best for me. This is what's best for the team, whatever the situation may be. And we've seen some guys cut pretty significantly to make a weight because they had to. That was their opportunity to be on the team. And we've seen some guys bulk up and make the move. Anthony Kasak certainly comes to mind, going from 197 and then winning the title at heavyweight the following year. But there have been other guys. Obviously, Aaron Brooks moved up and made a pretty seamless transition from 184 to 197. And so it certainly can be done. As you said, there is going to be several log jams somewhere along the way. Alex Facundo is there and is an elite talent and waiting for his opportunity here at 174. As you said, if Levi says, nope, 165 is my spot, I'm just going to go take it from Mitchell Messenbrink. Man, you're talking about in either of those scenarios, we're talking about a great, entertaining wrestling match between two top-end competitors. And that's not mentioning Zach Ryder. That's not mentioning, Josh Barr and the potential there with Carter Starocci. Or if Starocci does go up to 97, you have Mirasola there. And again, I think Mirasola is not coming in with the idea, oh, yeah, let me redshirt. I want to just take a year and ease into this.
Yeah.
Mirasola is coming in. He wants to win a national title out of the gate. So again, it's a great situation that any coach would love to have. It is still a really difficult one because you're trying to keep, you want everybody to be happy. You want everybody to be having an opportunity to achieve their goals, but you're also trying to just put out the best possible team you can.
Now, Jeff, something we do know for certain is that Penn State has its first opponent on the schedule for the 24-25 season. We don't know the date, but we know that it's American University. We're going to discuss that plus other potential schedule details coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Summertime means baseball. Summertime means postseason action and so much more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers are getting $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use on everything to bet on those postseason games to who's going to hit one out of the ballpark. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon, and add a big win to your summer bucket list. And right now you can look at the odds over on FanDuel, and you can check out the Stanley Cup Final. Game 6, the Oilers are back at home, and they're -120 on the money line. The total is set with an over and under at 5.5. So if you like those lines, again, all you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So Penn State Wrestling officially knows its first opponent on the schedule. Now that isn't confirmed where they're going to wrestle them, when they're going to wrestle them, but American University is the first opponent that is known for the Nittany Lions. Of course, it will be a victory, but I can see that one since it's a non-conference matchup, Jeff, where it could be at the beginning of the season, may possibly be a home opener for Penn State and Rec Hall, or that ends up being the final dual meet of the year, as they had with Edinboro this past season, acting as a senior day.
Yeah, and I think there's a bunch of different things that come into play when it comes to putting a schedule together, and I think Penn State has tried to help programs build and get an opportunity either by Penn State visiting to get a great crowd in areas that maybe are struggling to get good crowds, or to bring a program into Rec Hall. And I think in the case of American, I think they are coming into Rec Hall, and I think they just want to give them those kids kind of that experience. I think the connection here as far as why American would be on the schedule is Jason Borelli, their head coach, is Tom Borelli's son, of course, and Tom was the head coach at Central Michigan when Casey Cunningham was there. And I know Casey is pretty close with the Borellis. And again, I think this is just one of those, I'm guessing, that just came from those connections. Hey, we'd love the opportunity to give our kids that exposure from Borelli's standpoint. And again, Penn State needs to get the home dates taken care of. So I think it'll be a neat opportunity for the kids from American. I think over the years, American has had some very good teams. And I think Borelli is a guy that is known for having his guys wrestle a hard-nosed style. And I think that's a big thing when Penn State's scheduling opponents, is that they want guys that are at least going to come after you and wrestle. And I think they feel confident that that'll be the case with the American kids.
Yeah, that American won't wrestle scared, if you will, in this case, because Penn State is obviously the bona fide #1 program. And being the #1 program, you're going to net other potential out-of-conference matchups. Of course, everyone's kind of waiting for the news. Is David Taylor going to make the return? Is Penn State going to wrestle Oklahoma State, if that's neutral site, or if that's in Happy Valley, if that's at Beaver Stadium, right? Jeff, the first question I have for you is what is the another timeline here? What is the timeline to just get the entire schedule released? Like, when can we expect any potential news regarding a Beaver Stadium duel, Oklahoma State, Cael Sanderson versus David Taylor, the master versus the student kind of thing? When could we expect a lot of that news to actually release here?
Yeah, I am pulling for that, that opportunity. We
all are.
That to be, maybe the kickoff to the season. I just think it would be a ton of fun for college wrestling, certainly for Penn State fans, for Oklahoma State's program, for David Taylor and Cael Sanderson and all of the wrestlers involved. So count me among those rooting passionately for that to happen. Zach, it's been interesting. I feel like the schedule keeps coming out later and later, and I think part of it is the Big Ten, waits to get all of its dates set, and I don't know how much of that has to do with the Big Ten network and trying to figure out how everything fits together with the overall sports packages, and trying to make sure that they get what they want in terms of wrestling matchups when they want. And the last, I'm pretty sure the last couple of seasons anyway, that they, even when the schedule comes out, and it has been like in early September. I'm pretty sure last year we didn't get it officially announced until early September. And even then, if I'm remembering right, there were a couple, or at least one, either or date where it's like, yeah, it'll be either this Friday or Saturday on a given weekend, because there's a little bit of flexibility still in the schedule there with the Big Ten Network and with the TV possibilities. So I'm not anticipating that we'll get an official announcement on any of it until probably late August anyway. Now, whether or not they'd want to get the word out about the Beaver Stadium match, if they can get that confirmed and locked in, again, I think that's going to sell very well if you announced it the day before. They're still going to get a lot of people showing up. So I don't know that there's great urgency to necessarily get that out. But I also think it'd be a fun nugget if you can confirm it and you get it on the schedule. I think it'd be a fun nugget to get out there in a relatively quiet period for wrestling, maybe even ahead of the Olympic Games here in early July, if, again, you were able to get that worked out and, get everything logistically set for it. To me, the most challenging part from a logistics standpoint, Zach, and I think we may have talked about this a little bit earlier, is that you do have to have the contingency plan in place, that if it's just a rainy day or if it's a snowy day or whatever, the weather conditions are not conducive to having it outside, you have to have the plan in place that, okay, we're moving it to the Jordan Center. These are the fans who know, yep, my ticket is good over there. These are the fans who know, nope, I'm out of luck. I'll get the refund or whatever it is. And you just have to make sure that that is taken care of. Everybody's clear on what the situation is. And, you're obviously hoping that that doesn't happen, but you have to have that contingency plan in place. So making sure the Jordan Center is available, making sure, again, that everybody is clear on which tickets are transferable over to the Jordan Center, if that's the decision. All of those things come into play. And I suspect, and again, I don't know any of this. I don't know for sure that Oklahoma State and Penn State are even talking, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't be. And again, I know Pat Kraft has talked about his interest in having Beaver Stadium dual. I don't think it's necessarily something that Cael is passionately pushing for, but I also think he understands that part of what wrestling needs to do is think outside of the box, and I don't think Cael would hold up any objections to having a dual meet at Beaver Stadium. And again, to me, it just makes so much sense for Oklahoma State to be that match if you can get everything squared away for it.
Right. I know that Cael Sanderson appreciates Rec Hall above all else, but that gold standard for a potential annual, extravaganza, the matchup, if you will, of having a Beaver Stadium duel to open up the season against the likes of now in Oklahoma State, which becomes kind of a pseudo rival in a case, but you can't go wrong with Iowa. I think you could. I think you get the same kind of flair with Michigan and Ohio State. But let's be honest, the gold standard, Jeff, if they are going to do this Beaver Stadium duel, it has to be Penn State versus Oklahoma State, and it has to be early, the first dual meet of the year, if you're going to pull this off.
Yeah, I would agree. Just again, the storyline of David Taylor's first dual meet as head coach at Oklahoma State being a return to Penn State in front of what you're obviously expecting, and I think would clearly be the largest crowd in the history of college wrestling.
Sorry, Iowa.
Yes, to me, that's just too appetizing to turn away. And again, I truly don't have any inside knowledge. I can't imagine that this isn't something that will be at least a lot of effort will be put into making it happen. And at the end of the day, I just can't see the argument from Penn State or from Oklahoma State against doing this. Again, I think as long as you can get the logistics worked out on the date, having the Jordan Center available, making sure everything is doable, feasible at Beaver Stadium, and getting whatever contractual arrangement you need between the two schools and everything worked out. But to me, it's just such a no-brainer that I just can't imagine that it won't happen. But again, we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out.
That's the thing. We really have to be patient here. So we're not getting any updates in June, July, maybe August. I think the first week of September is a possibility. So that's the timeline there for any additional schedule announcements. And that's why we have him on the show. That is the voice of Penn State wrestling. Jeff Byers also hosts a morning sports talk show over on Fox Sports 98.7 FM in State College. If you're out of the area, stream it at 987thefox.com. Jeff, thank you so much for the time, the insight, and the expertise on Penn State wrestling as always.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it.
And once again, thanks so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. Be a part of the discussion down in the comments section. Let us know what you think about Carter Starocci's return, the dilemma, 157 pounds, and Penn State wrestling's schedule when it is ultimately released. If you did like this episode, leave a like on it, share it with friends and family. And if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app.